is that? Why is gluten so toxic to the brain? And the reason for that is a phenomenon called cross-reactivity. And in cross-reactivity, basically gluten looks very similar to brain tissue or nervous tissue. And the immune system essentially gets mixed up and it targets both proteins. So basically your immune system will see a particular protein of your neurological tissue and say, oh, that's gluten too. We better get rid of that. And so researchers have done some studying on this, and they found this cross-reactivity issue to 3 particular neurological tissues. I'm sure more, but the 3 that I am familiar with. The first one is synapsin. And synapsin is a protein that acts in in that synaptic cleft between neurons. Remember, we talked about that before. So there's that space between the neurons, and the neurotransmitters have to go and take the electrical charge from this neuron over the cleft to this neuron. And the synapsin basically is like a buddy that helps that process happen. And so it is that the synapsin that the immune system can attack, and that's going to affect your neurotransmitter function. The second area of this sort of autoimmune or gluten cross-reactivity is the cerebellum. So remember in the first class we talked about the different regions of the brain, and the cerebellum is in the back, sort of hangs under there like a little mini brain. And the cerebellum is responsible for your balance and motor control. So when all you have to do is think of somebody who's really drunk and how they walk and how they act, and their gait being unsteady. That's all to do with the cerebellum. So you can actually be having, your brain can be thinking that your cerebellum is gluten and attacking your cerebellum. Obviously not a good thing. The third component of the neuro cross-reactivity is an enzyme called GAD, G-A-D, and GAD is short for glutamic decarboxylase. This is a super, super important enzyme. It has to do with the breakdown of glutamine so that you can make GABA. So if you're familiar with neurotransmitters, you might already know that GABA is a very calming and relaxing neurotransmitter, whereas glutamate is kind of excitatory. And so if you do not have enough GAD, your pathway for neurotransmitter production is going to favor the glutamate, which will get you alert and thinking, and sometimes thinking too much, a real busy brain, and often it can lead to symptoms of anxiety or irritability or even outbursts of anger in children. We're going to talk a little more about that next week.